So the lecture will be presented by Jean-Marc Greneche, and the title is Structural and Magnetic Properties of Magnetic Nanoparticles. So you can start anytime.
Okay, thank you. So first, I want to thank the organizers and also to congratulate strongly Professor Ali Gencer on his team, because of course to organize a conference in this period is not so easy. And I understand, and for example, in my case, I was not able to go to Bodrum, and I am very frustrated to not be with you. So I want also to thank my collaborators first. So different students and different colleagues, we have given a large contribution for the work I will present you. Of course, the work is totally different from the previous one. So what I can do is to explain you what about the properties of nanoparticles. I will focus on the nanoparticles. And of course, for you, the first slide is some kind of evidence. But I want to remember that, of course, we have from magnetic materials, especially macromagnetic materials, bulk magnetic materials, we have some kind of salad to describe the magnetism, because you have to combine exchange, anisotropies, dipolar interaction, and Zeeman to understand the magnetic properties. So, of course, I think on the right side, everything is okay for you. So now, if we go to nanostructures, of course, what about the main questions? So assuming that, for example, we have some nanoparticles, so we can schematically describe by a kind of core, which is quite small, and which is a priori well-ordered. And at the surface, it is clear that to get the minimum of energy, we will have some relaxation and distortion of the surface. And of course, because we have symmetry breaking at the surface, we can see easily that the number of neighbors have decreased. So we have a loss of neighboring atoms, and consequently, in the aspect of magnetism, so the magnetic moments at the center, which have, for example, here, 6 first nearest neighbors, at the surface, they are losing some neighbors. So there is many questions about the neighbors, about the positions, and what about also if there is a magnetic moment which remains at the surface, and if this magnetic moment is equal to that encountered at the center. I have to tell now that sometimes we have a non-magnetic system in the bulk state, but when we have some nanoparticles, we can generate some magnetism because of these properties at the surface, and the situation is not very easy to solve a priori. So because the surface is highly distorted, the magnetic properties will be also modified, and because the interactions are quite strong with the first nearest neighbors, we can assume that we have, let's say, a layer of 2 atomic magnetic moments which is disturbed, which differ from that of the core. So the same description can be made for nanostructures, for which you have some grains which are packed each other. So the main question now is to know what about the interface, what about the grain boundaries, the nature of the grain boundaries, the chemistry, the density, and so on, in order to understand the interaction between the magnetization of each grain. And finally, we have also the description for multi-layers, for which, of course, a priori on the screen, we can have a very nice packing of layers. But in fact, we have to check what about the nature, the atomic nature at the interface, and such interface will modify probably a lot of physical properties. So that means that now when you are, I put the right comments on the left, and now I am introducing new comments which are characteristic of nanostructures. So typically the surface of a volume effect, of course, the smaller the nanoparticle, the larger this contribution of surface. What about the magnetic frustration? Is there some magnetic order at the surface, magnetic layer, magnetic dead layer? So many questions. what about the role of surface anisotropy, which becomes very important, of course, compared to a bulk system. So now we are typically single magnetic domain nanoparticles. Consequently, we do expect some relaxation phenomena, as it is called, superparametric relaxation phenomena. And sometimes we can also induce some phenomena as exchange bias. And while the system is much lower, and I think that there will be other topics on this to discuss on tunneling effect with a quantum description of the magnetic properties. So I will use essentially Mossbauer spectrometry. And of course, I don't want to discuss in details what about the Mossbauer spectrometry. I want only to give you some main elements. So you have monopolar interaction, you have dipolar interaction, and you have quadrupolar interaction. And of course, when you are considering, for example, in the case of iron 57, with transition from 3/2 on 1/2, typically the same as 14119. So we may have typical spectra as quadrupole or sextets. And you have a sensitivity to the local, structural, and magnetic order. Typically, of course, what it is very important for usually for chemists and for many others who are using this technique is, for example, the isomer shift, which is coming from the electric monopole interaction, which gives an information about the oxidation state as well as spin state, bonding properties, and so on. With respect to the isomer shift, of course, we have some values, and sometimes it's very clear to give evidence for the nature of spin state and valency state, but sometimes it's not so easy. So we have after the electric quadrupole interaction, so the doublet. So the doublet is characterized by quadrupolar splitting and also the isomer shift. And finally, for the Zeeman effect, so we can see some sextet characteristic of one magnetic moment. And of course, it is very important to underline that when you have a sextet, it does not mean that you have a ferromagnetic structure or ferri or antiferro. You have some magnetic order, and it is necessary to apply an external field to check whether the magnetic structure of the magnetic moments is either ferro or antiferro and so on. So sometimes it's very important to apply external magnetic field. And the first point is to check that the source is not polarized. So typically here, as you can see, so we have some compensating coils the field is opposite to the Lie field, and we are sure that the source is not polarized. And of course, now why apply external magnetic field? To get much more information on the iron magnetic structure, as well as on the total magnetic structure, to get information about the hyperfine field. Is it parallel or anti-parallel to the magnetic moment, which is crucial. And after, to have some, to follow some dynamics on essentially in the case of magnetic nanoparticles. So typically the spectra obtained on in presence of external magnetic fields. So the random correspond to a polar, but after, if you have some ferromagnetic system, either the hyperfine field is parallel or opposite to the magnetic moment, so you have such a difference, and you can see that you have the disappearance of intermediate lines, which means that you have a certain the magnetic moment are oriented parallel to the gamma beam. And of course, it is dependent also how is the gamma beam respect to the external magnetic field. So we have also in the case of antiferromagnetic systems. So on the contrary, you have an increase of the intensity of intermediate lines. We have also a more complex structure as peri and as magnetics. And what is important in the next discussion is respect to the ferrimagnetic structures, typically in ferrites. Because of course, if you have a spectrum which is obtained without external field, in many cases, it is difficult to be sure about the distribution of iron into octahedral and tetrahedral side. So by such a way, you have to apply an external field, which is of course the same for both moments, which tend to be opposite. And we know that in this case, we can find it, but we will assume dioclic for the figure, that the hyperfine field is opposite to the magnetic moment. And consequently, it's possible to split the sextet, which is not resolved into two resolved sextets. That means that it is possible to estimate carefully and accurately the proportion of tetra and octa, respectively here in blue and red, and as well as from such intensities to have an idea about the orientation of magnetic moments with respect to the gamma beam with such relation. So as I discussed before, the questions essentially when you are studying nanoparticles, so what about the size or the sizes, the distribution of size, the ratio surface over volume, their morphology, their dispersion. In some cases, it is necessary to integrate in some matrix. So finally, the surface disappears at the expense of interface with the matrix. What about the chemical homogeneity? All those questions have strong influence about the intrinsic magnetism of nanoparticles, as well as the roughness of the surface, and in addition, relaxation phenomena. Sometimes you can add some molecules at the surface. So that means what about the modification? What about the link between the molecule and the nanoparticles? So many questions also on this system, on those systems here, but I will not discuss after. So I will shift. And now what we will do is to discuss some examples on cobalt ferrite, magnetite, and so on. So as probably most of you know, so there is a lot of interest in ferrite. Why? Because the ferrite, which exhibit this composition, exhibit the presence of octahedral and tetrahedral sites. Consequently, you have some ferrimagnetic structure, but of course, this ferrimagnetism is strongly related to the position of atoms, and sometimes you may have some cationic inversion, which originate magnetic frustration, spin glass-like behavior, cationic inversion, reverse spins. So it is not so easy to estimate a priori what about the nature of the magnetism. So of course we have magnetite, we have hematite, which is an antiferromagnet. It is much more easy, but there is no strong interest in such a system, but we can find in many nanoparticles too. We have also the gamma Fe2O3. Finally, gamma is a maghemite, which derives from the oxidation of Fe3O4. And sometimes the maghemite is characterized as a defective magnetite. And we have also the epsilon phase, which differs by its structure. So the main aspect when your colleague in chemistry has obtained nanoparticles, the first small experiment is X-ray diffraction on transmission electron microscopy. And you can see here there is many situations. You have a kind of zoology about the nanoparticles. Are they homogeneous? Are they well distributed? What about their morphology? And so on, and so on. So you can see that maybe the limitation of transmission electron microscopy is to have the possibility to discuss on a large number of nanoparticles. Because of course, if you establish an histogram about from about 50 nanoparticles, is it representative of the sample? So as mentioned, the second idea is to do some X-ray diffraction. And of course, on the left, you can see the typical X-ray pattern on the crystalline system, since on the right side, you can see on nanoparticles. So it's quite evident to see some broadening of Bragg peaks. But how to describe? And it is quite difficult. And I would suggest in most of cases, first, when you are ready to fit, because there is different codes, and if you think that your X-ray pattern is well fitted, to check also with another scale, especially for the intensity, because sometimes you can see with a linear scale, everything is okay, but when you go with a logarithmic or square root scale, the agreement is not so evident. So by this way, you can estimate the different lattice parameters, but exactly the mean value of lattice parameters, as well as the mean dimension of the coherent diffraction domain, which a priori corresponds to that of the nanoparticles. So sometimes you have kind of disagreement, especially on the baseline, because you may have a grain boundary contribution or a surface which is highly distorted. And this has to be considered in some cases. So now I will introduce Mössbauer spectroscopy, which you will see that it is very important to study such a system. Typically here, as I mentioned before, you have some 0 Tesla spectrum obtained on nanoparticles of maghemite. And if you increase the external magnetic field, you will see a splitting, as I mentioned before. And by such a way, you are able to estimate the fraction of tetra on octa. So knowing this, so we have studied the different nanoparticles, especially, for example, here, two sets of cobalt ferrite nanoparticles. On the left side, we have to say that they were prepared by different processes. They had the same mean value. Most of information was exactly the same, coming from magnetic measurement, transmission electron microscopy, X-ray diffraction, and so on, including Mössbauer spectrometry obtained at room temperature as well as at 77 K. But by applying external field, as you can see, the two spectra are quite different. So on the left side, you have one spectrum, and you can see that you have a nice splitting as in the ideal case. You can estimate the proportion of tetra on octa, and you can see that there is a very small counting, probably due to the surface. In the present case, the nanoparticles for both systems were about 5 nanometers, yes, diameter. So now, in the second case, it was not so easy. And you can see that we have a broadening of peaks. We have an overlap on the two sextets, and where you have a large intensity for the intermediate lines. So we took approximately 1 year to fit such a spectrum, because the idea, for example, from this one, is from the value of the effective field, as I have mentioned before, to estimate the value of the hyperfine field and to fit the spectrum which has been obtained without external magnetic field. So in such a case, it was okay. But in this case, it was not okay. And finally, we have discussed, I don't want to enter in details, but we have considered distribution of angles, distribution of hyperfine field. And finally, we were successful in fitting both the zero field spectrum and the in-field spectrum with the same model. And the conclusion for us is that the nanoparticles, since they have very small size, they were not chemically homogeneous. We have, in the present case, a chemical gradient of cobalt, which exceeds the mean value at the center, and of course, which is less at the periphery, and vice versa for iron. So that means you are very sensitive to the chemical homogeneity within nanoparticles. And this has been also observed in other system, metallic system, as iron platinum or iron rhodium. So now an example which is very important, because there are plenty of applications, especially for medical application, hyperthermia, or for the adjunct contrast in MRI, sorry. So the case of magnetite. And typically the magnetite, the spectrum is like this, and you can recognize easily the presence of two sextets. And the two sextets are 1/3, 2/3 for the proportion, corresponding to the proportion of iron 2 of tetra and octa. As well as here, we have also two isomer shifts, because the center of gravity is not the same. So here it's clearly iron 3+, but here it's neither iron 3+ nor iron 2, but it is typically iron 2.5. And this is observable above the Vervet transition. So when you have now as a priori nano magnetite, so as I mentioned, a priori. So you can see that the sextet is rather similar, but you can see that there is different intensities for the outer line compared to previous one. And finally, in this case, you have not pure nanomagnetite, because the isomer shift exceeds expected one. And finally, you have some nanomagnetite, which has been oxidized. So that means what you could see, that you have a kind of core shell structure, assuming probably naively that you have a pure magnetite in the core, and you have a surface of maghemite. And it's possible to estimate the surface, the thickness of the surface, which is typically, we have done many studies, you can estimate at about 3 nanometers. Of course, it may vary according to the condition of synthesis. But what is very important is during 90s, there were a lot of studies demonstrating that the velvet transition was disappearing, was a decrease of the size. Finally, it's not the real cause. Typically, when you have very small nanoparticles, finally, they consist at the end only of pure maghemite because the magnetite has been completely oxidized. And because maghemite does not exhibit velvet transition, so of course the velvet transition disappears. Okay, so to my knowledge, I have seen only the presence of nanomagnetite in the case of some nanoparticles prepared by biomineralization. And of course, such a situation occurs because the ferritin, which has been changed into magnetite, it was in anoxic atmosphere, so no possibility to oxidize. And you can see typically on this spectrum the presence of both components at room temperature, because of course you have some supraplanetary relaxation instead of sextet, as I showed you before, but you have the presence of iron 3 and the presence of iron 2, which is consistent of magnetite, as well as at low temperature. So now we will consider nanoparticles with different diameters, as they are given on the left side, and these nanoparticles are highly dispersed. That means that you can neglect the role of dipolar interaction. So you can consider that they are insulated from a magnetic point of view. When you can see, as before, a splitting of the outer lines, but in addition, you can see here an increase of the intermediate lines once the diameter is decreasing. And this is completely related to the presence of surface effects with a canted magnetic structure. So what we have to conclude first is it's not because you can't see that it does not exist, but of course its contribution becomes highly small once the diameter exceeds, let's say here, about 10 or 15 nanometers. So finally, now it's possible to describe a nanoparticle from a magnetic point of view by considering a core, which is well oriented with a ferrimagnetic structure, and a shell with a distribution of magnetic moments, typically, which can be compared to that of a powder, a random distribution. Conclusion, it's possible from such equation on the intensities of line to estimate roughly the thickness of the canted layer, which is about 0.7 nanometers. That corresponds to 2 atomic layers, as it was roughly predicted in one of the first slides. So, of course, in some cases, you may not observe such a canting because you have some dead magnetic layer, the magnetic moments are muted, or you have a much more complex surface structure. So it is possible after to do some Monte Carlo modeling, which is rather naive, but the idea was to compare and to put a competition between surface anisotropy and volumetric anisotropy. And it is possible to see different magnetic behaviors with a collinear structure, with frontal structure, and hedgehog structure, because, of course, of the strong contribution of the surface anisotropy. And, of course, in addition, you have to take into account about the size of the nanoparticle. So we have done also some NMR, but magnetic NMR on maghemite, and we have seen roughly the same attitude as we have observed in the case of Mossbauer experiments under external magnetic field. So now, if you want to functionalize nanoparticles, so the main interest is to know, and it is possible to observe what about the chemical bond between the nanoparticle and the molecule. Here you have some carboxylate, and here you have some phosphonate over very nude nanoparticle, which result from, I would say, a mixture of magnetite and maghemite, of course, at the surface. And we can conclude that in the present case, so one was with the link, one was with covalent, it was a covalent link, a chemical bond, while the other one was ionic. And we know that it is very important in the case of application for of nanoparticles for hyperthermia or for some drug delivery targeting. So to control what about the chemical bond between nanoparticles and molecules. So another case here is we have introduced dopamine. And of course, the spectrum at room temperature is not so evident since we were working on the spectrum at lower temperature. And you can see that we have an increase of the hyperfine structure is modified. We can see the appearance of a third sextet. Of course, the intensity of lines are rather similar. Now, if we fit the spectra at 77K, and it has been confirmed by doing some in-field Mossbauer measurements. So at the beginning, we have two components, as I mentioned before, clearly attributed to tetra and octa. And after grafting the dopamine, we have a change with the appearance of the third component. And the isomer shift is larger. That means you have electron transfer. And in addition, we can see that the contribution of the octahedral site has decreased. That means that typically dopamine is now attached on through octahedral sites. So what we have done, we have used DFT by considering a layer of magnetite. And after we consider molecules of dopamine, and we put them very close each other. And we have seen that the preferential attachment was from here O atoms onto iron octahedral units. And we could see also some p-donor character of the ligand, which is perfectly in agreement with the transfer of electron we have observed, as well as the new structure after grafting. We have done also on different other molecules, and in some cases, no change is observed, and in the case of DFT, no change also is observed. What I would add, what it was once very funny, is it was impossible for our colleagues from chemistry to prepare and to functionalize some molecules on nanoparticles, and finally, it was impossible also by DFT to minimize and to have some final structure. So now what I want to see you is you can also play with the surface by adding molecules which contain some magnetic species. Typically here it is with cobalt, and the aim was to enhance the surface anisotropy. And of course it was rather successful, and we have done many complementary measurements. Of course, field cooled, stereofield cooled, magnetization, Mossbauer, out of field in presence of field, XMCD, and the different results were consistent, and we could observe a nice increase of the surface anisotropy. Now another type of example. So I have given the presentation with increasing complex structure. So now we have not few nanoparticles, but we have hollow nanoparticles. And of course, the characteristic of hollow nanoparticle is what about the thickness of, I would say, the skin. And we can see on the left side that we have a very thick skin, about 2-3 nanometers, and the magnetic behavior is very similar to that of full nanoparticles. In opposite, in the case of thin hollow nanoparticles, typically here about 1 nanometer, we could see that the magnetic behavior is completely different, especially when you are applying an external magnetic field. So at the beginning, it was impossible to fit easily by, of course, pure Lorentzian. So we put distribution of Lorentzian, distribution of Gaussian. We systematically found that there was a larger content of octahedral larger than expected. And finally, we are fitted with 2 ferromagnetic structures. Why 2? Because we can assume that because we have a ferrimagnetic structure, so we have 2 different magnetic moments. They are completely distributed because the advantage of hollow nanoparticles finally, the surface is twice as in the same size nanoparticle. And finally, this when we exceed the contribution of the surface, we can see that we have a huge non-linear magnetic structure, which can be described by two ferromagnetic components, one corresponding to each magnetic moment, iron-free octa and iron-free tetra. The advantage of the result is what we have seen, that the two ferromagnetic structure were antiferromagnetic coupled, so two tetra, so it was typically as in the case of a ferry. In addition, we have seen that, of course, the contribution of the octa was highly superior to that of tetra, 80-20 instead of 62.5, 37.5. So finally, we could conclude that we have essentially octahedral units, which can be assumed as closing units, as we were suspecting since more or less 20-25 years. But we had no strong argument to confirm this. So we have also observed some different magnetic behaviors, typically at low temperature, because you have a kind of, I would say, of freezing temperature in those ferromagnetic behavior. So finally, what we have to consider is that the structure of when you have thin layer consists of a kind of sandwich. The two external layers correspond to the surface, and we have a very thin internal layer, which is a priori rather symmetrical, but of course it is highly connected to the surface, which are very prevailing in this case. So by such a way, it was possible to try to do some modelization, but modelization not by considering pure Monte Carlo as before, but what we have done is first to simulate the structure at the atomic scale. So we have used molecular dynamics, and then Monte Carlo, and then DFT. And after considering some full nanoparticles, we extracted a thin layer, and we could conclude to first, what about the magnetic behavior, which is rather, of course, related to the surface anisotropy, and it is consistent with Mossbauer results. And also, what about the structure of the surface? And we can see the occurrence of a surface which exceeds, as well as the internal surface on the external surface. So they exceed with octahedral units, exceed much more than expected ones. Sorry. So of course now all those studies observed on nanomagnetic on nanoparticles, magnetic nanoparticles. Sorry. So it can be extended to nanocrystalline alloys. And in fact, it was. So nanocrystalline alloys results from amorphous alloys plus heat treatment, and we have excellence of magnetic properties, low corrosivity. And of course, it's possible to follow what about the role of the grain boundaries in such a system, and also the interface between grains and amorphous remainder. It's possible also to apply to ball mill alloys. So especially to study, for example, the exchange bias or spring magnet behaviors. In the case of ball mill oxides or fluorides, and we have also followed this problem of exchange bias. And now there is a lot of studies related to nanocomposite with graphene and nanotubes and so on. So finally, to conclude this lecture, so I think the crucial point is to have high quality of nanoparticles. So they have to be very homogeneous, and it should be easy to reproduce. So it's necessary to thank the chemists, and we have to collaborate with them, because they should have a large expertise in the synthesis. So then it's necessary to have a detailed structure of the detailed characterization, of both structure and magnetic properties. And after, it's also possible to introduce different techniques and to fit in the case of the Mossbauer spectra, to fit spectra obtained at different temperatures with nanoparticles with different sizes, and after to go towards other techniques. And of course, you have plenty of techniques, each one with its own limitations, So that means it's very important to know what about the sensitivity of all techniques to be able to compare carefully all the results. And also at the end to do some modeling of either the structure or the magnetic properties, as now we have much more possibilities with huge computer facility. Okay, so I want to thank you for your attention. I am sorry to not be with you in Bodrum. I want to thank you from Le Mans, where I am living. And so please welcome to Le Mans and thank you again for your kind attention.
Thank you, Jean-Marc, for your excellent lecture. Now, we have one question before we proceed to questions in the audience. We have one question from the comments, from the chat, and it is that, do you think that all metal oxides show weak ferromagnetism when their particle size is reduced below 100 nanometers?
Can you repeat exactly?
Yes. Do you think all metal oxides show weak ferromagnetism when the particle size is reduced below 100 nanometers?
It depends what is weak ferromagnetism, because weak ferromagnetism is characteristic of some magnetic structure composed of antiferromagnetic main component plus a small ferromagnetic component. So I would say I disagree with such a description. So what we can say is that I would say down to 30, 35 nanometer diameter, the magnetic structure can be compared to that of a bulk material. Below 35, about, in some cases, it might be 25 or 40. So after we are reduced to have probably a single magnetic domain, and in some cases, the magnetic structure is rather stable. But if you decrease the size, you will introduce some dynamics, some superparametric relaxation effects. So it's, to my point of view, I do not agree with such a description with weak ferromagnetism. So, or maybe if the person who asked the question could give more details on it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Is there any question in the physical audience? There seems to be no question, but I have a question for you. When you have a different stoichiometry or oxides of different stoichiometry, you showed a particle with a core, which was, I think, Fe2O3, and the inside, the outside was Fe2O3, and I think the inside was Fe3O4. That means you have a reduced inside, right? And is this because of the way these nanoparticles are prepared, for example? Are they prepared under high temperature routes, or how are they prepared?
So as I tried to mention, that it's a very important and good question, because it is related to many applications. So first, I have studied many nanoparticles on the collaborating groups we were sending the nanoparticles. A priori, they were claiming that they had prepared some magnetic nanomagnetite. Okay. Of course, when you are doing X-ray diffraction, it's very difficult to discriminate from the value of the lattice parameter if you have either magnetite or magnemite or a mixture of both of them. So that means, to my point of view, it's not possible from X-ray diffraction to have a clear answer. Why? Because, of course, it is highly dependent on the synthesis conditions. So now, because Mössbauer technique is highly sensitive to the oxidation state, so of course, from the isomer shift, you are able to estimate what about the mean oxidation state. And consequently, as I have mentioned, so it's possible to estimate naively, I would say maybe stupidly, but to have a pure core shell. Of course, you have to consider progressive decrease of the stoichiometry. So now, related to the synthesis techniques, I would say that most of techniques are going to maybe a priori some nanomagnetite, but it is immediately oxidized. So we have also recent results I could present, but I have selected maybe more elementary ones. So it was possible to follow that during the synthesis, after careful, trapping of nanoparticles, you have either a nucleus of magnetite, which oxidizes, and after it is growing. The second scenario is to have a nucleus of magnetite, which grows, and after it is oxidized. And it is very important to have some connection, some relation with the shape, with the morphology of nanoparticles. So recently, we have also other colleagues who prepared some nanoparticles in controlled atmosphere in glove boxes. And it seems that, of course, it is easier to have few nanomagnetite. Nevertheless, the hyperfine parameters are not strictly the same as typical magnetite. So I have some doubt, not on the existence of magnetite, but maybe what about this? I will not say new magnetite, but there is probably some distortion in the red, maybe a change on the lattice parameter. But up to now, we are not successful to identify where does this origin come from. Is it clear?
Yes, very, very nice. Thank you. Yes. Any question from the audience? And okay, since there's no questions, we thank you very much again for such a nice lecture. And
thank you.
I'm sorry that you are not here because this is a really wonderful place. So I hope you will be able to come next time.
I hope so. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your time. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice conference.
Thank you very much.